Ralph I. Goldman, beloved mentor, visionary, Zionist, you've dedicated your life to advancing social justice and the welfare of the Jewish people. One of the extraordinary personalities in Jewish life, and I would say one of the extraordinary personalities in Jewish history. Ralph Goldman is universally recognized as the Dean of Jewish Public Service.
I feel, first of all, passionate about the Jewish people. Working is the reason why I am. Labora ergo sum. We've had a moving experience all our life. We kept on moving from place to place.
I just thought every day was an adventure.
You got to believe in what you're doing, and you have to be optimistic that what you want to do is going to be done. My birthday, September 1, 1914, and I was born in a small town called Lechovitz in the Ukraine. One time the Cossacks came into the house with on horses. I remember them coming in and my mother got, frightened and everything else. I guess I must have been afraid of something, but just a memory. Remember that we were on a wagon with horses. My father had us all packed, the whole family. We were 5 children at a time. We traveled by wagon from the Soviet Union to a town beyond the border all day. So I remember that morning, that part I remember. My mother called me a malach. I was a bad boy too, because one day I played hooky from the Hebrew school for a week. And the principal came to see her, to tell her that I didn't go to school for a week. So of course I got hell and I went back to school. But it was actually that principal who, in a way, saved me. Because, if I hadn't finished Hebrew school, I would have gone to the Hebrew college, would have gone to all the rest of the things which had an effect on my life. The Hebrew college was what you call a non-denominational school. Nobody asked you whether you went to a synagogue. Nobody asked you whether you're Orthodox, Reform, Conservative. These 3 terms didn't even exist for us. So we were all sort of in a special cocoon. Don't call it a cocoon. We're living in a personal period of idealism, which is very, very important. That any kid that's not an idealist in the teens and the early 20s, I don't think can succeed.
My first visit to Palestine was in 1938, when I received an AVUCA scholarship. AVUCA was the Student Zionist Federation. I was, at that point, chairman of the New England Zionist Federation, the AVUCA, and I got a scholarship. It was a great idea, by the way. It was one of these free scholarships. You could go and do what you pleased.
I went, for example, at one point I was living in Dan, and we went to establish Chanita. I was with them during the night to establish Chanita. The whole idea was that you needed land, and you needed to establish the fact that you're on the land. And so any new establishment, any new place was important to achieve. I remember being in the shower and shaving, and it was open stuff. There was nothing there yet, and all of a sudden they began to shoot. So we had to disappear half-shaved. But so was a Chanita just at that particular time. Being in these situations, like when you're in Jerusalem, and it was the Intifada. Of course, we were terrified, but what do? You continue. I suppose right after shooting, stopped, I went and finished my shaving.
We were just flirting through a letter. Then one day Ralph called and he said he had an army pass and the weekend off. And when I meet him at the Pennsylvania Hotel, the huge lobby. And I said, oh, I'll find you, you'll have a uniform on. And I got there were hundreds of people with uniforms. So I went to the concierge and said, could you page Ralph Goldman for me? And Ralph was standing right there.
I was waiting to be demobilized afterwards, and lo and behold, we discovered what had happened to the Jews in Europe. And with the help of the U.S. Army and a Catholic chaplain, I volunteered, like many other American soldiers, to help with the DPs. And so every afternoon, when we finished our work in the Army, I proceeded down to Marseille to help. I remember one youngster, Herb, age 12, I was conducting a class of Hebrew for some of them in Marseille after bringing supplies. He disappeared suddenly. He disappeared to look for his family in Poland. And there were many, many such heart-rending cases. It was there that I met up with the Haganah, the illegal immigration, so-called illegal immigration, Aliyah Bet. And they told me when I get back to the United States, and I'm demobilized at the end of December 45, to please go right around the corner from here at 14 East 60th Street, which was the headquarters of the Haganah. And they were trying to get money, recruit people, get supplies to help prepare for the War of Liberation.
I was working with the whole establishment we had at Hotel 14. And Teddy was the head of it. There was a weekly luncheon at the McAlpin Hotel in New York on Thursday. And the Jews of America would come there, would hear a story, what's happening, what had to be done to prepare, and they would just toss in the dollars. And that money was the money that was being given to the Haganah to do the buying of ships. In addition to my role as the director of the personnel for recruiting for the ships had to be bought. And this money came from voluntary contributions that were done on that Thursday night. We put out the newspaper called Haganah Speaks, and after the state was established, I was the publisher for a year or two. Then it became Israel Speaks. All of these things were done by volunteers, and it was a very, very exciting period. The other thing was, of course, even the business of getting the votes at the UN. Don't forget to get 33 votes at the UN to get the permission, to get the resolution passed was also an important thing.
Egypt, no. Soviet Union, yes. United Kingdom, abstain. The United States, yes. Yugoslavia, abstain.
Resolution of the Dutch Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstentions.
עצרת האומות המאוחדות החליטה על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל. אך איזו שמחה הייתה זאת.
The Zionist leaders were celebrating Israel's Independence Day on Friday night, May 14th, by being at the Waldorf and having a party, while some of us were busy getting on radio, not quite a legal radio we got information that morning that directly from Syrians that the Syrians were going to attack. And some of the people I needed to reach, we couldn't reach them. They were busy celebrating. Obviously, the army knew a lot of things. With this kind of information, it's a combination of information that you need, not just one piece. And yet I had nobody to talk to. I don't blame people for singing and dancing, the excitement. But when you're in a battle, you're working. I mean, when you're working, you continue with your work. You don't stop to have a drink, because this was serious.
Being close to Ben-Gurion on various occasions was the greatest privilege any person could have. If you look back at Jewish history, I don't think we can count very, very many people who have had an impact on Jewish history as much as this man Ben-Gurion.
Where could that have been? In the United States?
Yep, that's in Manhattan.
Oh, well, this was not Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, this is Madison Square Garden.
Oh my goodness. Madison Square Garden is a story by itself, where all the PR people and all the speechwriters would be embarrassed. Because Ben-Gurion came to Madison Square Garden, 25,000 people there. He had a speech, a written speech. And at that time, the New York Times used to appear, always appeared, 8 o'clock in the evening. The morning paper appeared 8 o'clock in the evening. And they published the entire speech. When Ben-Gurion saw these 25,000 people, he threw away the speech and delivered an impromptu speech. We had to go the next day to the New York Times editorial board to meet with them for lunch to apologize, because they were embarrassed. The speech appeared in full. That was not the speech he delivered.
In '53, I was appointed director of the Point 4 and the UN Technical Assistance Program. This was an effort on the part of Israel to coordinate the assistance that they were receiving from the United States government and from the United Nations. It was a brilliant chapter in Israel's history.
Point 4 Pro was probably one of the most exciting things I ever did, because in a way it gave me an opportunity to be part of the establishment of the state. And during my time, we moved from working only in agriculture to the area of industry.
You ended that period of service in Israel in 1958. You came back to the United States and switched from the political world in which you had been working, and you came into the cultural world in another organization called the America-Israel Cultural Foundation.
It was a time when the young violinists were coming into being. Yitzhak Perlman, Pinchas Zuckerman, Daniel Barenboim, all these youngsters got some assistance, and that's another chapter. Lots of people gave their art, and it was a period when Billy Rose joined forces and gave his sculpture. I also had a share in selecting the site where the museum was being established. It was just a great period.
You enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed all my work. I haven't done anything that I didn't enjoy.
The Israel Education Fund, and I want to mention this, was actually the idea of Ben-Gurion. He wanted all the children of Israel to have free high school education. The idea was they were going to set up an independent campaign to raise money for building of the buildings, and the buildings, and afterwards the government would be responsible for maintaining them.
It was a period where a major contribution was made by the United Jewish Appeal. It was also a period when lots of big money came into the UJA. Another thing which I think is important for you as American Jewish leaders, what has developed in this country by way of federations, and what has developed in this country by way of Jewish community centers. Two major American Jewish institutions. Those institutions can have a great deal of impact on Israel's life as well. When we put on the list of the Israel Education Fund the establishment of what you called before as community centers, I want you to know that at first the government of Israel only wanted youth centers. This was a country oriented towards youth only. And I had an awful time trying to get the people in Israel to recognize that building a youth center is not only cultural and spiritually not the correct way of doing things, but economically unwise. You're going to start building all kinds of youth centers, and instead of having a place where you can have your aged, as well as the preschool kids come. And finally, we were able to put community centers in that area. So what I'm trying to say really is this, that you can impact the life of Israel not just with funds, but with funds that have a program meaning.
Well, that thing ended up, Ralph, after you started it so brilliantly, with over $100 million contributed to it, and something like 1,200 schools and community centers built, dotting the countryside from top to bottom. This brings us down now to the long period of service you had with the Joint Distribution Committee.
I don't know of another organization that is as passionate about the Jewish people wherever they happen to be. And for that reason, I feel that even though I've worked for the Joint a few decades, I feel as if I've worked for the Joint all my life, because that's the purpose that has always motivated me. As Mr. Singer, when I met him when he got the Nobel Prize, said he could still feel the warmth of the blanket he got in Warsaw from the Joint. Soloveitchik, when he came to our office one day, told us about he could still taste the hot cocoa that he got from the Joint in 1917 as a kid. There are 3 R's in JDC: rescue, relief, and reconstruction. Rescue is temporary. It's dramatic, but temporary. Relief should be temporary, because JDC is not a government, is not a Rothschild, has got all the money. It cannot feed everybody or say nobody will go hungry. So the most important part is reconstruction. Most important is to enable the community to restore itself and individuals. They wanted to change the operation from a Malben direct service for the agent, because there was no way for the JDC to continue to be in a direct service operation. When we had the Malben institutions in Israel, Malben was delivering services for some 6 or 7 institutions for the aged. They started with 5,000 beds for the chronically ill, and by the time I got here, it was 1,100 beds for the same amount of money. Each year, we were serving less and less people because there was no way for a private agency to do what is really a responsibility of the state. The only way we could do it is to establish a program together with the government of Israel, with the understanding that eventually the government would take over. When I first developed the notion of JDC-Israel, it was a pad which said that this would be an office of 50 people. We would have 15 or 20 professionals, permanent, and staff, service people. But that if we developed a program, the program would, the person who developed it would go on with that program elsewhere. One of the great revolutions for JDC that happened is to move away from, particularly in Israel, is from the lachrymose approach, the tier approach of which always appeals, rescue, relief, hunger, that sort of thing, to doing research. But the fact of the matter is that 30 years ago, Brookdale was established, which is an applied research agency. $1 million spent on Brookdale can save the state $200 million. I don't know whether it's really $200 million or $150 million, but there's no question that research being integral now to JDC. It's a real revolution from the days of 1914. Brookdale is not JDC alone. It's 50-50 with the government of Israel. The only thing that is not on a 50-50 basis, sometimes 75% basis, and the only thing that should not be on a 50-50 basis or partnership basis is the Center for Social Policy. Center for Social Policy should not have any governmental support, because that has to be an agency that suggests alternatives. What can be done if it's done this way or if it's done another way? And they have made a great contribution to the economic development of the country, and are making it. I had a luxury as an executive. I had staff who did the work. And I had an opportunity to sit back every so often and try to think what we need to do. In 1979, long before the fall of communism or anything else, I wrote to myself a note saying that someday we are going to get back to the Soviet Union. So while everybody else was working, I was trying to figure out how we could re-enter, especially because in the United States at the time, there was a period when they were talking about détente. The return to Eastern Europe was a major event in our Jewish history, because in Eastern Europe, you're seeing remnant communities, a few Jews who are seeking their way into Jewish life again. That's what Eastern Europe is all about. Returning to Eastern Europe, particularly Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, was important for the Jewish community. But at the same time, I felt that the only way to do it in any country, but particularly in Eastern Bloc countries, is through the front door. I don't like the back door. We began our negotiations with Hungary, returned to Hungary on January 16th. I signed the agreement.
Which year?
1980. This was followed soon after by return to Poland. I happened to be there on the day they declared martial law. Here I was in Poland, all by myself, and here I had a tentative agreement that had to be written in Polish to sign. And I had no way of communicating with New York to find out what I should do. The guy at the embassy said to me, well, maybe you shouldn't be signing an agreement with the Poles at this particular point. So I said, I'm here as an ambassador of the Jewish people, and I'm not here for political reasons. And I met with the Minister of Cults, and in the afternoon, I decided I'll do it anyway. And in order to laugh it off a little bit, I took out of my pocket that 3x5 pad that I have, and I said to because they were delaying the final document being brought over, and we were having our drinks and the food that they brought together in some hidden place in Warsaw. Finally, I said to him before the document was brought over, I was hoping it wouldn't be brought over so fast. I said, here, this is a blank piece of paper on my little 3x5 pad. I'll sign here, you'll sign here on this little pad. After all, everything depends on the goodwill of how we implement it.
Some called it cultural genocide. For most of the century, the Soviet government's persecution of Jews was designed to destroy Jewish continuity.
The collapse of communism gave the Jewish world once again to be reunited as one Jewish world, as we have the things in common. And JDC was an organization that had the facility to actually perform during these great changes in the history of the 20th century.
There were about 8,000 people that night. About 1,500, 2,000 inside the synagogue, and then outside the 8,000.
אבל האמת היא שהג'וינט גם מגיש עזרה רוחנית בעולם היהודי.
First of all, I want to say добрый вечер.
Прежде всего, я хочу сказать добрый вечер.
To Madame Klinskaya.
Госпоже Клинской.
I'm happy to be here.
Я очень рад быть с вами в студии.
The joint was established in 1914, right when the First World War started, to help Jews who were in need, particularly in this part of the world. And in January 1988, when we came back, and we were asked by your government, what kind of work would you like to do here? We said, now we need to help restore Jewish knowledge, Jewish learning to the people here because they didn't have it for the last 70 years.
I see the order of French Legion.
Yes.
It's a very rare award.
Well, when I retired the first time in 1985 from the work of the joint, the French government awarded me this honor for the work of the joint. When I retired the second time, I got another great award.
Но когда я ушел в отставку второй раз, я получил еще одну очень большую награду.
One of my colleagues, Michael Schneider, who succeeded me, both the president, Mr. Epler, and then now Mrs. Hassenfeld, asked me to work here in the Soviet Union. So that today, I'm working in the most exciting part of my work and my exciting part of my life to develop programs here in the Soviet Union.
I'd returned on the 16th of March from Moscow. At that time, I was going to Moscow back and forth about every month. And I was having lunch with one of my colleagues. And I came back from lunch at 2:30, 2:45, which was, and somebody in the office everything was sort of quiet until somebody walked into my office and told me something happened in Argentina. First of all, I decided I will continue to investigate it, not publicly, but to continue, and I'm still doing it to this day. Well, you continue basically with, on the one hand, fighting it, in your own manner of fighting it, and at the same time continue your work, because that's the only way you can survive. Saturdays and Sundays were always difficult for us.
היו תותפות בין עיניך. כתוב תותפות, טפת, אבל בכל אופן, מה ההיגיון? ההיגיון הוא פשוט. הראש הוא לא דעה אחת. כשאתה רוצה לעשות משהו, אתה מתלבט, נכון? אתה חושב לעשות ככה, כן לעשות, לא לעשות, איך לעשות. כשאתה מחליט, כלומר הראש מחליט, מי מבצע? היד. אז היד חייב להיות יחידה אחת. והיה לך לאות זיכרון בין עיניך. מה זה? זה התפילין. שם קדושת תפילין.
שם קדושת תפילין. קדושת אבא שלך.
שמע ישראל השם אלוקינו השם אחד.
When I retired the first time,
I had the intention of spending time at various universities to be sort of a person in residence, not a scholar in residence, but a person in residence for a week, and just be available to answer questions. It is very important for professionals to be rooted in Jewish knowledge, not only history. History, you know, historians write one way today, and other historians will come next year. That goes back to the whole business of literacy, Jewish literacy. Because if you look back in terms of management, we talk about management. Moses was the guy who decided that he can't be a single leader, he's got to have people to help him. You know? Or it was Yitro who told Moses, his father-in-law told him to do it. But the greatness of the Jewish people is exactly what you have in the Talmud, is that there's disagreements between the rabbis, and there are even places where you say teku. They'll have to wait till Eliyahu and Navi will come. It is the Hebrew language, to a great extent, that has kept the Jewish people as Jewish people throughout the centuries. Language communicates the culture and the tradition of a people. And we're people who have lived a long, long time and have survived a long, long time. No single person, no single organization can do the job all by itself. It is impossible. When the staff people come around and they do community work, I always say to them, Misamcha, who appointed you to do that work? You should have been appointed not by JDC to help, but by the local community. When people working with community come into community, they have to prove to their bosses they're doing something. And actually what they have to do is not do something, but to have somebody else do it. The local community has to do the job. You have to help them. You can't do it for them. So the ultimate goal of what we do anywhere in the world is the person has to help himself. Our business is to go out of business, not to be in business. And I've been on selection committees, you know, for people who were going to be working for us. After I selected them, I would say, have you found a successor? The job is really not your job. The job is for you to do. If the job is really important, if the work is really important, you better think of who's going to be your successor. The role of the professional is really to give the professional direction of the organization. The responsibility for that direction lies with the board. And therefore I see the professional basically as an educator, a person who educates the board. It doesn't mean that lay people cannot contribute to the professional side as well. So you learn from the lay people a lot, but the professional has to be the person who professionally leads the organization and is able to persuade the people to take responsibilities. On the other hand, a professional says, I am not responsible for raising money. The lay people should be responsible. It's not really a good professional. The board should be composed not just of one element of people who are generous and give contributions, but also some academics, some people in other professions, leadership, who are not in a position to give money, but to give spiritual or educational values are also worth something. And so a board which is composed only of the people who are there because they're good financiers or willing to give is not really a board which at least I would like to have. I think I did a lot of things which are very tough on the family. You've got to remember that I was part of a period
not a generation, because in every generation there are people like this. So I'm not taking age into account ever on these issues. But it was a period where we were in the midst of doing something where very historic things happened in Jewish life. And so somehow when you have that kind of a motivation, that that something new in Jewish history is being built or being established, you're being pushed. You don't push, you're being pushed all the time to see what you can do to be of help. JDC has always reacted to disasters on a non-sectarian basis by using its own money. In the late 70s but early 80s, we decided to sort of institutionalize it more. The non-sectarian programs that we established had a primary goal of, on the one hand, doing an important service in cases of emergencies that were happening in the world, and identifying it as a Jewish effort, and number two, using Israeli experts wherever we possibly could. If I, as a Jew, want to contribute to non-sectarian work, I can do it through the Red Cross. But to give it the Jewish identity and the Israeli identity was very important. Neither Israel nor the diaspora can look at the issue of Israel only or diaspora only. That was during the political Zionism period, we had to do it, because you have to be extreme to achieve something like a state. If JDC did not have in its subconscious the role of Israel in Jewish life, it would be wrong. If the diaspora does not have in its subconscious the place of Israel, it's wrong. And therefore we have to find a way of the interdependence. Because today, diaspora and Israel are interdependent. You've got to have on the side the extreme groups who will fight for a single battle. That's perfect, that's right, that should be. But if you look at it globally the way we should, I think we have to think of what I call a global Jewish strategy. There's so many places where crises can take place today. I am not a Jew because of anti-Semitism, so I hate to even think of anti-Semitism being a crisis issue that I at least would want to be involved in. But it could happen for a variety of accidents, not even planful things. But to predict crises is very, very, very difficult. It's okay for the speakers and for the people who have to deliver emotional, gung-ho speeches, but I don't know where the crisis is going to be. But we sure wait. Look, the United States is going to have a crisis with 9/11. Now it's a question of putting blame on this one, that one, but basically, look at how a crisis can a crisis like that come into the United States? I think the most important thing is still to find a common language in the broad sense, not just the Hebrew language, between the Jews of the world, the Jews of Israel, and the diaspora. Someplace along the line, I think we have to sit back and say, why are we, as an organization in existence, we're an organization to deal with the destiny of the Jewish people? I have been lucky, privileged, lucky, whichever way you want to look at it. First of all, I had the support of my family. There wasn't a task that I undertook that I did not enjoy, because I always felt I was not developing a career. I was not looking for a career. I was basically in the service of my people.